Hello and welcome to Title Sports Network. My name is Seb Parkinson and I'm delighted to be joined by Dan Rafael. Dan, I'm sat in King Khalid International Airport in Riyadh. It is just turned 5:30 in the morning. We're here to react to the 5v5 Matchroom versus Queensberry 10-0 drubbing for Matchroom on the night. I'm sat in the airport because the Wi-Fi went down in the arena and I've got a flight to get to. So I just said, let me get out of there. Let's get to the airport and then I'll give Dan a call and we'll get Dan's full breakdown and full reaction, starting with that real brilliant fight between Willie Hutchinson and Craig Richards, which started off for me a little bit poor and then it really became a bit of a tear up. What was your assessment of that?
You know, I love you Brits because you use words like tear up. Like, we don't say that in America, but when you say it, I know what you mean. It's a great way to describe it. It was a hell of a fight. I'm not surprised that Willie Hutchinson won the fight. That was my pick. Richards is a heck of a fighter also, but just a step too slow, maybe not quite as physically strong, maybe not quite as hungry, just a little bit behind in sort of every kind of facet of the game. He got out he got way behind in the beginning of the fight. And even though he made a nice charge over those last few rounds where, Willie had to kind of ask himself some questions and kind of dig deep. But that's what the veteran Richards was there to try to make him do. He couldn't do it early in the fight. He did it late in the fight, but he kind of ran out of rounds pretty much. And, to Willie's credit, he got the biggest win of his career by far and showed that he can become a real player in the light heavyweight division. It was a tremendous fight for a fight that was so sort of one-sided in terms of the cards, 11-1 on one scorecard, 9-3 on one card, 8-4 the other. I mean, it was a pretty one-sided victory in terms of the scoring. But if you watch the actual bout round to round, that was no wipeout fight. That was a tough, hard fight, but Willie was winning most of the rounds. So credit to Willie for getting a big win, for opening the show in an exciting fashion. If you're into the Matchroom versus Queensberry aspect of it, getting his team on the board 1-0 with getting that victory. And for Richards, even though he lost the fight, it's not like he's done. It's not like he can't come back. I mean, it's not like he got embarrassed. He didn't get knocked out. He didn't get beat up. He just lost to a much younger guy that was fresher. I felt like was maybe a little more hungrier, but really good way to kick things off.
Yeah, that was the only real fight that had any needle to it as well, because earlier in the week there was this video footage around of the two of them at the red carpet waiting to go to the grand arrivals, and there was a bit of back and forth between them, and Willie Hutchinson used the word bumperclart, and Craig Richards didn't like that and claimed he was being racist, and read into that what you will, but that was the only real bit of needle between all of the fighters. It was very mellow. If anything, it was too mellow. It felt like it was a little bit like, come on guys, we need some action here. But just moving on to that next fight, Nick Ball and Ray Ford. I had Nick Ball winning that on points. That was the first fight of the night that I got right. I was backstage for that fight. I missed most of that fight because I was waiting for Willie Hutchinson to come through to do interviews with. So, when Nick Ball came backstage, his face was bloodied and bruised, but he had a big smile on his face.
Well, he also had a nice new shiny belt around his waist, which he felt like he should have won in his previous fight where he got the draw fighting for the WBC belt against Ray Vargas. Look, him and Ray Ford put on a tremendous battle. If you ask me, I think that might have been just action-wise the best fight of the night. Maybe the second best. We'll get to the Dubois Hrgovic fight. But that was a really good fight. Listen, when the show was made, I think we talked about it on the preview. I said this was my favorite fight on the card, Nick Ball against Ray Ford. I don't know what your score was in terms of the numbers, but I scored the fight in terms of the scoring. I had it for Ray Ford, 115 and 113, like one of the judges. The other two judges had it 115 to 113 in favor of Nick Ball. But I have no quarrel. It was a very close fight. There was at least 3 or 4 rounds that you could have swung either way. Both guys left it all in the ring. It was like a brilliant fight. Ray, obviously, as he said afterwards, that was his last fight as a featherweight. He struggled to make the weight big time. He only stayed to in terms of making the defense because this fight was offered to him. Obviously, he was making good money. It was somewhat soon after his last fight. He won the belt back just 3 months ago. And you got to be thrilled for Nick Ball. He's a very exciting fighter. Looks like a hard-working guy in the ring, round to round, just gets inside and just wants to, smash you as best as he can because he's never going to be bigger than his opponents in terms of his stature because he's pretty short, but he's got a lot of heart. And you mentioned about when he came back through to do some interviews after the fight, that he was a little bit, bloodied up, but he got I believe it was round 7. He took a real wicked shot on the nose. I don't know if his nose was broken, but it certainly was a little bit of an eye opener for him. And look, it's what you want to see. I mean, both guys should be proud of of what they did. They both fought very well. It's just that in these types of fights, it's not a draw, but one guy wins, one guy loses, and this was as close as it can get with one guy just barely eking it out. So all credit to him. And it's not the kind of fight where you're going to see a rematch, obviously, because Ray Ford's on his way up to the 130-pound weight class, where I expect he'll make some noise there. He may be stronger and a little better, putting on a few pounds. And Nick Ball, look, he's young, he's fresh, he's hungry. He's exciting to watch. I expect him to be involved in some, as you said, some tear-ups, in the near future as he goes forward. But a heck of a win for him. And again, I think that was the best match fight on the card. I just love the match when they made it, and in practice, it lived up to it. Seb, listen, we're going to go through all these different fights, but as just a total entity of the 5 versus 5 fights plus the Bivol fight, just as a total card of 6 bouts, that was as entertaining and as enjoyable top to bottom of a boxing card as I've seen in a long time. Now, there's lots of shows that have good fights and they're exciting, but there's always one fight or whatever that just totally stinks, or that you're just not into, or has some controversy or some kind of weird ending and whatever. This was one of these kinds of shows. Every fight was good for one reason or another, or there was a good knockout. There was no controversy. There was no scoring that people were upset about. There was no quick stoppage knockouts that people are getting all crazy about. Everything was what you want to see in a card. Competitive, interesting, a lot at stake in most of those fights. Good action and no BS and no controversy scoring wise or knockout wise. So I thoroughly enjoyed the whole thing top to bottom.
Yeah, there was only 6 fights on the card, and it's interesting because obviously we like to see young fighters coming through on these prelims, these cards, who can come and make a name for themselves and build a fan base with the people who turn out early to watch them. But at the same time, as boxing fans, we like to see these big, stellar, A-class Hollywood events where it is just the best of the best, or some of the best of the best, fighting on one particular card, and that's what Turkey Sheikh's allowing to happen with the financial backing he's got. Moving up then, so we had the first captain of the night, the first knockout of the night, Hamza Shiraz and Amo Williams. Just what did you make of that fight?
Well, first of all, again, similar to the Nick Ball fight against Ray Ford on paper going into the fight, very fascinating fight. 2 guys who are on the rise in the middleweight division, which it needs a star, needs a name, because it's pretty dormant at the top of the division at the moment, with a lot of guys who are not well known or are inactive. But Shiraz and Amo Williams are 2 of the best young guys out there, and they still are after what they showed. I mean, Shiraz, you got to give him credit. He got the knockout. He looked good. He's so long and so tall. Williams showed a huge heart. Even when he was getting banged around and his eye was a little bit messed up, he never stopped firing away. He's still trying to get inside and do his damage. That's the youthful exuberance that he has with still not that many fights into his professional career. In my mind, even though he got stopped, this in no way should detract from him going forward. He's going to lick his wounds for a little bit and probably deal with the pain of losing the fight. But I think when he goes back and watches it, he should be proud of himself. He was with a very tough guy physically in terms of the size disparity, which is going to be Shiraz's great advantage no matter who he fights in the middleweight division. But I think Austin Williams absolutely can learn from this experience and find a way to get better and shouldn't let this loss get him down. But Shiraz, he's the real deal. It seems to me this guy's long, he's strong, he's got a heart. He took some good shots. I mean, Amo rocked him. I think it was was it the first round or the second round? Had him a little bit wobbly, and you're like, okay, maybe he's going to get the knockout, and maybe Shiraz is not what people were making him up to be. But he got himself together, and he did a good job. He's a tall fighter and a long fighter who uses his height and his reach to his advantage. So he can fight you on the outside. But I found it interesting when he was speaking after the fight, talking about how he wanted to fight a little bit more on the inside. And, he let Williams kind of come into his chest a little bit, and he banged it out at times. So, that showed me that he's a versatile fighter. He can do it on the inside and the outside. And I don't think he's going to encounter, at least in the present constitution of the middleweight division, there's not a lot of guys around that are going to be that much tougher or better than Amo Williams in my mind. Even the guys with the belts. I'm not saying he's going to beat up on Janibek, for example, but it's not like he's going to get blown out if they were to ever fight. This was a great test. I love this fight. It was a good knockout. Sportsmanship between them afterwards. I mean, it's what you want to see.
Yeah, Hamza Shiraz during the week was oozing class at every opportunity. He dressed in a nice suit for one of the media events. He was respectful to Eddie Hearn. He was respectful to everybody. He was just, you know what, he came across, I'd never met him before, and he just comes across as such a nice, lovely bloke. and he earned a fan in me. He earned a fan in me this week because what a lovely guy, and he can turn it on in the ring and go out there, and you just sort of don't look at that guy and think he's going to go in the ring and knock 10 bells of shit out of somebody.
He said he earned a fan in you. He also earned because he was the captain. And again, if you're into the promoter versus promoter angle of it, you're getting the knockout. He earned not just the 2 points for the KO, but the 4 points because he was the captain. And the way the rules are working, if you were the captain of the team, he got double points. So he got the 4 points and he got the knockout. And by the way, it was also an official middleweight elimination fight, final eliminator for the WBC title. So he just made himself the mandatory challenger for Carlos Adames, who's going to defend his title coming up in a couple of weeks on the undercard of Tank Davis against Frank Martin. But that puts him in the position, for that next mandatory fight.
Well,
so good performance. A lot of big stuff for him.
Yeah. Well, at the end of the fight, when he came and did his media, he actually told our reporter Joe Lee that he's going to put Chris Eubank Jr. into retirement. So that's a potential fight that we could see.
I think that would be a tremendous fight for England. I mean, that's a pretty big deal fight. I'm not really tuned into what was going to be next for Eubank Jr. I mean, there's always been the prospect that if Conor Benn got his license back, they would try to maybe put that back together. But you know what? I'm sure that since that doesn't seem like that's going to happen, if you're Eubank, and you score your big win in the revenge fight against Smith, if he can get himself a title shot or even not a title shot, because obviously Shiraz would still have to go and have the title bout. But if Shiraz wants to risk that mandatory and fight him before he gets the title shot, who wouldn't be open to seeing that? There's, frankly, probably a lot of money that can be made for that fight, title or no title. So I would love to see that matchup.
Well, we've got a Wembley card coming up in September. Who knows if Hamza Shiraz is ready for it? Chris Eubank's a free agent. You never know. He could be on that Wembley mega card. No, J.R. Pataya suggested to us yesterday that he's going to be on that card. So whether we'll see who he comes up against. But J.R. Pataya this week has talked about a potential clash with Dimitri Bivol, who was next up on the card, against Malik Zinad. Another stoppage. I actually had this down as Bivol winning on points, despite the fact that he was levels above Malik Zinad sort of on paper. They're both 22-0. Did you expect the stoppage?
I actually thought they might go the distance because he's just hadn't had a knockout since 2018 or something like that. It'd been like a string of, I want to say maybe like 9 or 10 or 11 fights or something before he had a knockout. And, he has fought other fighters that were good fighters, but not at his level. So, he just sort of, I call him the metronome. It's just like one round is the same as the other. He's very effective. He gets the job done. He sticks the jab in your face. He's able to come on the inside. He can back out a little bit, but he can, take you to school technically. But he just didn't seem to be hitting too hard in recent fights. So I kind of expected it would go a lot of rounds. But Zinad, look, his record 22-0, was a lot different than what Bivol's is in terms of the opponents they had faced. Bivol's level of opposition is dramatically greater than anything that Zinad had fought. But I give Zinad credit. He had a couple of moments. He landed a nice right hand at one point. He had a moment. That's all you could ask for. So he should be proud of the performance. Turki Al-Sheikh afterwards said he was impressed by the heart and how much he showed, that he invited him back to appear on, either the card in October or the card in December. Obviously, he announced after the fight officially, obviously it's going to be pending the health of the knee of Beterbiev. But the plan now, as they announced, is to make that undisputed fight for October the 12th in Riyadh. So it was supposed to be the main event, instead of the 5-on-5. The 5-on-5 was supposed to be below that fight. But at least we're going to get it, presuming that Beterbiev is healthy. So they made that announcement. So Bivol gets the knockout. He's going to get the undisputed fight. Beterbiev is going to be there. Hopefully the knee is good. Zinad's going to get another opportunity because he performed well enough to earn another chance to be on one of these big shows. And you mentioned about the possibility someday of Bivol and Opataya. Obviously, they want to take the undisputed fight and do that first. And I would say whether it's Opataya against Bivol down the road or Opataya versus Beterbiev down the road, point is, if one of those two guys who wins, wants to go up and tangle for the real title at cruiserweight, there's nothing wrong with that, right? The real light heavyweight champ of the world coming off whoever wins the undisputed against Opataya, who has established himself as the #1 cruiserweight. That's a dynamite fight also. And the beautiful thing about it is the teams that can all work together. Turkey's got the money. Turkey's got the drive, the desire to make the fights. People want to do these events. They're getting paid and they're making big fights. And that's what it's about.
Well, I'm just reading on our YouTube page as I'm talking to you, and our reporter has done an interview with Jai Pattaya post-fight, and the headline says, "Let's get it on Bivol." So,
Yeah.
he wants the Bivol fight. Bivol's suggested he will go up to cruiserweight to fight him. So, let's see whether we've unearthed the gem on the Title Sports Network YouTube channel.
I'll tell you one thing though, they're gonna have to wait to see what happens with Beterbiev, because by no means is there a guarantee that Dimitri Bivol beats Beterbiev. It could be the winner of that fight, is the way I look at it.
Yeah. Right then, it's the heavyweights, Dan. It's Hrgovic, it's Daniel Dubois. It's one that people were really, really split on. Daniel Dubois won the fight in the 8th round by knockout. It looked like Bivol had a bit of a cut eye. I was actually waiting to interview Dimitri Bivol during this fight. So, say again?
Oh, no, that was say this was a I call it a slobber knocker. Just the two guys. They have skills, but they just decided to let's go at it and just try to get each other out of there. Hrgovic had the misfortune of getting the eye cut on both eyes. It was a tear up. I mean, he got cut over both eyes. His face looked really bad. He had a big first round, and Dubois, started to come back. Listen, these guys landed some hellacious shots, and I know the fight was a knockout, but it wasn't like Hrgovic got knocked out. He got stopped on a TKO because the doctor looked at the cuts and recommended to the referee to stop the fight. So yeah, it's a stoppage loss, but he was still on his feet. He showed a great chin. Dubois showed a great chin. They both showed a ton of heart. And listen, if you follow Daniel Dubois, you know that one of the big raps on him was that people questioned his heart. I questioned his heart, and I'm not the only one. But he showed, the way that he fought tonight, that he had it inside. And he did similar performance against Jarrell Miller. But the difference in my mind is that Hrgovic is a much better fighter than Jarrell Miller. So to me, the combination of his activity level, you gain the confidence when you have that kind of fight against Miller, and you can carry it over into this fight that was only a few months later. Look, these guys put on a hell of a show. Somebody had to win. I thought Dubois, he's got that confidence now. He's dangerous. Now, if they talked about him being the possible opponent for Joshua on the September card in Wembley. I'm not sure he beats Anthony Joshua, but I also don't think it's an easy fight for anybody in the heavyweight division at this point, the way he's fought the last couple of fights. Good. This was a hell of a fight too.
Yeah, and Dubois obviously was a very young heavyweight. I think he was 23, 22 when he fought Joe Joyce, and that was like during COVID, and it was like this is where Daniel Dubois is going to have his breakout fight, and then Joyce beat him, and it derailed him a little.
Yeah, and he's still only 26 years old. He's not an old heavyweight. He's only 26, so he's got plenty of years left as long as he can avoid big damage. But the thing about it that was impressive, he's a baby. He puts himself in a wonderful position, and Hrgovic, he put him in the hospital. He was getting stitches after the fight. He had to go get checked out. So hopefully he's okay, obviously. And he can bounce back from this. But that's a career victory for Dubois because he lost. A lot of people called him a quitter against Joyce. He got knocked out by Usyk. He did get the knockout against Jarrell Miller, but that wasn't as big of a win as this one was. This was big time. And also most importantly for him in terms of where he is placed, he wins the interim IBF title, which we talked about that before, all the craziness of them trying to get that sanction, what they were going to do with Usyk. So he gets the IBF title. So he's going to be in the mandatory position to be against a winner, presumably. I don't think Usyk's still going to have that belt come the time he fights Fury the second time. Maybe it'll be against Joshua for that belt. But the point is, he's in a great position with the win, but an even better position because of the juice that belt gives him.
Yeah, well, the talk is that belt is going to get stripped and it's going to be on the line on the Wembley card, which, as it stands, could be another Matchroom versus Queensberry, Dubois versus Joshua. What we saying?
And Dubois would get elevated. He would just become the IBF champion. So I really didn't quite understand why they have to wait. They could have either done it and made it for tonight. They are going to allow the 30 days that Usyk got because of the medical to pass. I strongly suspect, though, that in the coming weeks or month or so, you'll see Usyk no longer have the IBF belt and Dubois will be simply elevated. And if he does fight Anthony Joshua, which seems to be the obvious fight, especially if you're doing a Wembley fight, that will fill the place up. Two Brits fighting for a world title. That'll be a big deal. And it'll be for a title, give Joshua another chance to win a belt, Dubois to defend the belt against the biggest name that he could possibly get into the ring. So, it'll be very interesting if you ask me. I would look forward to that for sure.
Excited, and I win. I feel really deserved to win because of what he's been through in the past few years, all these mandatories and delays and everything. But sort of as a Brit wanting a Wembley card, Dubois versus Joshua, that was sort of what I was sort of hoping for, really. Even though I did actually have Hrgovic down to I think I had him to win by KO was on my tweet. So I can't say that I wanted Dubois to win and predict.
Yeah, I mean, and listen, by the time,
as much as I think Joshua would win that, just on.
Yeah, and I mean, you just broke up on me a little bit there with the connection in the lovely airport there. But in terms of besides the belt that you were talking about and doing the possible fight with Joshua, this was also the fight that broke Eddie Hearn's heart, because once his guy lost, there was no, if Hrgovic had won by the knockout, and then Deontay had done the same, he could have at least drawn, got into a draw with the Team Queensberry. But once Hrgovic was out of there, that was a definite loss for Team Queensberry, for Team Matchroom, I should say. Which just added another element to what was already a tremendous card.
Right, Dan, the last but not least, I've got 10 minutes before I've got to board my flight, so we need to run through this. Deontay Wilder. Is Deontay Wilder finished? Is he retired, Dan? Deontay Wilder, is he gone? Is he retired? Is that the end of Deontay Wilder?
Well, those are two different questions. The retirement aspect, that's going to be up to Deontay Wilder to have a long conversation with himself, talk to his team, talk to his trainer, his manager, his family, and he'll have to make that decision. Could he fight again? Of course he could. Would he be in this level of a fight for that kind of money? Obviously would not be the case. You can overcome losses in the heavyweight division. It's just very difficult when you've lost as many as he has in recent times, with just a one win in there against Hellenius, which was not even that big of a win. Look, it's been a great career. He's made a tremendous amount of money. You got to remember how Deontay even came to boxing in the first place. Here was a guy that's like every other kid that grew up where he grew up in Alabama, wanted to play football for the Alabama college football team. That did not happen. He had a little girl that had a lot of medical problems. He needed to make money. And so he goes from, being working in a pancake house in a fast food place. And he turns to boxing, and he quickly established himself as the amateurs. He made the Olympic team, got a bronze medal, became a professional. And it was, not that much longer where he's making real money. And then he gets a shot at a title. And then he went on a great run as a champion. He had 10 title defenses and was making, multi-millions of dollars, had the trilogy with Fury, made huge amounts of money, and has made 9 figures in his career for a guy that was making minimum wage, and put his family in a wonderful position to pay for the medical bills and to have all the comforts you could have, and have a great career in terms of, being known as one of the greatest punchers we've ever seen. So if this is the end for Wilder, he goes out on his shield. He's got nothing to hang his head about. He had a tremendous career, won an Olympic medal. I had the great privilege of covering his entire career. I obviously was not there tonight, but I was there for Deontay's pro debut. I was there for fights on the way up. I was there for something like 8 of his 10 title defenses. I was there when he won the title, all 3 Fury fights. My point is I got to know Deontay over the years. There for the comeback fight. He's a good guy, heck of a fighter, great punching power, one of the best punchers, if not the very best single puncher I have ever laid eyes on in my time of covering professional boxing. But he's 38 years old, been a lot of damage, been a lot of miles, and Father Time is unbeaten. Now Zhilei, who was the guy that got the win, is older than he is, but doesn't have nearly the kind of damage and mileage against the top opponents compared to the guys that Deontay fought. So that was not a great fight. That was probably, in terms of the overall card, that was the worst fight of the card. But it was obviously it had an explosive ending, which makes everybody kind of forget what it was going into that. But he got him with a tremendous right hook, came behind it with another shot and flattened him. And, once again, Deontay showed the heart. He got up, got the heart of a lion, got to his feet. Obviously, the referee made the right call to stop the fight. But even, similar to like with Hrgovic, he didn't go out flat on his back. But if that's the end of Deontay Wilder, it probably should be. And if it is, I hope he has a great life, because he earned a ton of money. He earned a lot of fans. He earned a lot of respect from me and from lots of other people over the years. So good for him. But not his night. And, what are you going to say? Like I said before, Father Time waits for nobody. Seems to me his time at the top is done.
Yeah, well, we were talking about this during the week, that had it not been for the Riyadh Saudi money, he probably would have retired. But who is going to turn down that money? Who isn't going to say, "Go on, I'll have one last rodeo to see what's left"? In a way, I'm kind of glad that he didn't fight AJ. In after Joe Parker, because I feel like AJ, the fight that we all wanted between AJ and Wilder wouldn't have been what we got.
Well, the thing about that
maybe
is that
how we
that's one of those deals where it is. I was thinking about that after the fight, that whatever you thought about the card and the show and whether Deontay was going to retire or not, obviously Joshua was there and he did an interview after the fight with the DAZN folks. It will always irritate me to death that these two heavyweights were undefeated, held the titles between them, Deontay with the BC title and Anthony with the other 3 belts. They had conversation about the fight and they could never make that fight. It should have been these 2 great heavyweights in their prime. Both were undefeated, should have been for the undisputed title. They dicked around back and forth multiple times. I blame both sides for different at different times of the negotiating and conversations. And it's one of those fights that is lost, as I say, to the dustbin of history. We'll never see it.
Deontay